to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video, as rumors have surfaced that the New York Giants are interested in potentially bringing in Jason Garrett. I'm going to try to have a defensive coordinator video up as well on some of the names that you guys pointed out as guys that you would like the New York Giants to look into. We'll see if I have that up by the end of the day. But like I said, the rumors have come out about Jason Garrett, and he was a name that a lot of us were scared of that the New York Giants would consider as a head coach. And, I was not shy in my opinion. I was not a fan of Jason Garrett. You talk to most Cowboys fans, they're not a fan of Jason Garrett as a head coach. Now, this video is about a potential offensive coordinator. The rumors have been out there that the New York Giants are potentially interested in him. And it would be easy for me to get on here and say what a lot of you guys want me to say. Get on here and say, this guy sucks, Dallas Cowboys, I don't want him anywhere near the New York Giants, and I get that, right? We don't like the Dallas Cowboys. But I tried to be as objective as I could here and as fair as I could with Jason Garrett as a potential offensive coordinator. Jason Garrett is a former quarterback, right? So he's got a good mind there. He was a former quarterback's coach and then an offensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys, where he had a lot of success when you really dig into the numbers and look and see what he did with that Dallas Cowboys team and the challenge that he took on, which is why he got the head coaching job to begin with. And I say it all the time. There are a ton of guys that are great coordinators and are atrocious head coaches. You go down the list, whether it's on the offensive or the defensive side, Pat Shurmur, Ben McAdoo, the last two guys we've brought in with the New York Giants were great coordinators, weren't worth anything as a head coach, even though McAdoo made the playoffs his first year when he was granted, all these all-stars, via free agency on the defensive side of the football. But yeah, McAdoo had great success with the quarterbacks. Eli Manning's best statistical seasons in the regular season came under McAdoo. Pat Shurmur, say it all the time, was a phenomenal offensive coordinator for many years with the Vikings, with the Eagles. There's a number of instances where you could say quarterbacks had career years under him that were not good quarterbacks in other places. And Jason Garrett, by his record, was not a horrible head coach either. Obviously, he had a ton of talent. But, obviously what I wanted to look at in this video, being that the New York Giants are looking at him to potentially be an offensive coordinator, is his success as an OC with the Dallas Cowboys and the Miami Dolphins early on in his career. And I also said when the New York Giants hired Joe Judge that I think it's imperative that the Giants bring in some guys that have some experience in the NFL. Being that Judge has never been a coordinator, he's never been a head coach, it would be nice to bring in a guy like a Garrett, a guy that's been around the league. He's played in the league. He's coached in the league. He's a quarterback. Our most important piece on this team, nobody could debate it, is undeniably our quarterback, Daniel Jones, on the offensive side of the football. Daniel Jones, a lot of people wanted to keep Shurmur, or at least consider keeping Shurmur, because of Daniel Jones. We saw the success that Jones had in year one. We didn't want to screw that up in year two. And one thing I'm going to say about Jason Garrett, and trust me, I hate this guy, with the Dallas Cowboys. When he wears the New York Giants shirt, if he comes here, I'll embrace him as an offensive coordinator. But one thing I'm going to say about him and give him credit for, he took two guys. One was undrafted. The other was like a fourth-round pick in Dak Prescott, who nobody wanted to give a chance. Tony Romo was undrafted. He made both of those guys Pro Bowl caliber quarterbacks. And you got to give him credit for that, especially being that he's a former quarterback. He came up as a quarterback coach and had great success as an offensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys. People forget that 2017 was 13-3 before the New York Giants knocked him off, and they had a great offense. And Tony Romo was just 3 years into his career with that football team. 2005, he didn't play a lick. But let's jump into some of his accomplishments. Let's jump into his resume, and then I'll go over what he did throughout his tenure as an offensive coordinator. So there is Jason Garrett, and fortunately in that picture, he's not clapping. And hopefully he limits the clapping when he gets to the Giants. I know we all get annoyed when we see that. But here's his resume. As a coach, he was the Miami Dolphins quarterbacks coach in 2005 and 2006. So I did a little digging there. I went back to his history with the Miami Dolphins, and I saw the quarterbacks that he took on, and I saw what they did. Now, there was no talent there. He had A.J. Feely, who was a horrible quarterback. He had Gus Frerotte. Gus Frerotte, if I remember correctly, as a kid, I think he played a little bit with the Redskins. Maybe the Vikings, I can't remember. But he was never that good of a quarterback. And under, I think it was in 05, maybe 06, one of those 2 years, under Garrett as the quarterbacks coach, Frerotte actually had a pretty decent year. He ranked 15th in the league in passing. He had 18 touchdowns, which by today's standards doesn't sound that good. But back then, 18 passing touchdowns was near, average, middle of the league. And he turned a pretty bad quarterback situation into at least a competent one with the Miami Dolphins, which is why the Dallas Cowboys called him up. Another thing I want to point out about Garrett, obviously an attraction for the Giants, possibly. He's a former Giant. He played with the Giants, I think, his last year in his career as a backup quarterback, and maybe they saw, his brain, how he worked as a quarterback with the Giants, and maybe saw him as a guy that could be a good coordinator or head coach. Obviously, he's not going to be the head coach, but he's a guy that his whole career and coaching accomplishments is basically based off of success with the quarterback, which is what we got to be looking at for an offensive coordinator. Daniel Jones, man, we have to make sure this kid is good to go in year 2 and doesn't regress. So then he takes the offensive coordinator job in 2007. In 2006, Tony Romo came onto the scene. He was decent. I think he threw for just under 3,000 yards, and he was decent. The Cowboys, I think, went 9-7, and they made the playoffs narrowly as a wild card. In 2007, his first year as an offensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys, the offense ranked 3rd in the entire league. And they, like I said, they went 13-3. They had a dynamic offense, and they had a balanced offense. Marion Barber was a pretty good running back from what I remember. Of course, Tony Romo had a great year. Tony Romo that year was 3rd in the NFL in yards. He was very efficient, and it was his first great year. And like I said, this was a guy that was undrafted. He only got an opportunity because Bledsoe got hurt the year before, and he led the Dallas Cowboys to the number 1 seed in the NFC before, of course, the New York Giants picked him off. But nevertheless, he took a guy who was undrafted, not thought to be much, and turned him into a Pro Bowl quarterback very quickly. In 2008, the Dallas Cowboys ranked 13th, but that was due in large part to the fact that Tony Romo missed 3 games. Even with missing those 3 games, Romo was still 12th in the league in passing. In 2009, as offensive coordinator, they rank 2nd in yards in offense, under Garrett being the offensive coordinator, and Tony Romo was 3rd in passing yards. So again, great success at the quarterback position. And then in 2010, Romo only played 6 games. So he missed 10 games in the season. He sustained an injury. And the team still I believe, ranked, middle of the pack in offense. Which is why Garrett got appointed to be the head coach with the Dallas Cowboys in 2011. Romo continued to have success, was near, one of the top 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks in the league, at least statistically, before they would always choke in the playoffs. But that is a credit to Jason Garrett at the quarterback. And then the other guy, of course, Dak Prescott. And you saw the success he had with Romo. You have to at least think that Garrett had something to do with the success of a quarterback that no team really wanted on draft day. So if there's one positive to Jason Garrett with his career in the NFL, it's that. It's definitely that. It's his ability to mold quarterbacks that were not thought to have very high expectations coming into the league. Now, Daniel Jones, of course, was an early first-round draft pick. Now, a lot of people didn't think he'd go as high as he did, but he was obviously thought of much higher than a guy like a Tony Romo, who was not even drafted, who went to a small school, similar to a Daniel Jones when it comes to football. Romo, I say it all the time, I think is one of the most underappreciated quarterbacks since I've been watching the sport. Even though he didn't win big games, Tony Romo was a great quarterback. He was borderline Hall of Famer. If it wasn't for injuries, might have been in consideration for the Hall of Fame. And Jason Garrett is widely credited with that. Romo's success, in my opinion, is the major reason why Jason Garrett got the head coaching job with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, we all know my opinion and probably your opinion on Jason Garrett as a head coach. But that's not the question here. The question is, can Golf Clap Garrett be a good offensive coordinator for the New York Giants? And I actually think, and there's a couple of other names. Jay Gruden, I think, is another guy. But Jay Gruden, of course, was very high on Daniel Jones on draft night. I think he would, relish the opportunity to work with him as an offensive coordinator. And who knows if Garrett's going to want to take this job, but there's rumors that he's talked to his assistants about potentially joining the Giants, a former Giant. He's coached within the division. I think it makes sense. And like I said, great success with quarterbacks in the past. He's a former quarterback. Our focal point, year 2, has to be to get Daniel Jones going on the right step, getting a new playbook. And this guy has done it with other quarterbacks that did not have near the expectations as the number 6 overall pick. I like Jason Garrett as a potential offensive coordinator. I would welcome it. Like I said, I know a lot of you guys want to hear me say he sucks. He's a Cowboy, but I don't care. Once a Giant, always a Giant, they always say. And if he could help us as an offensive coordinator with his mind being a former quarterback with the success he's had with quarterbacks throughout his history as a coordinator, why not bring the guy in? I think he makes perfect sense, actually. I think he's a good guy for the New York Giants to target. He'd be a guy with a lot of experience on the offensive side, and then I try to work on a guy with a lot of experience on the defensive side to pair with an inexperienced head coach. You got to surround this guy with the proper foundation, and Jason Garrett may just be that guy on the offensive side of the football. We'll wait and see what the New York Giants decide, and if Garrett wants to take the position. The one thing I will mention that I'd have to worry about a little bit, and one of my subscribers pointed out, I don't remember what it was off the top of my head, but I want to give him a shout out. In my last video, he said, Chris, would you worry about Jason Garrett if he got the job, would be looking for a head coaching job within a year or two? And that's a great point you bring up. And that's something you got to worry about. But at the end of the day, that's most coordinators in this league, right? You take a look at the last video I did, all those guys were like a coordinator for a year or two. And if they get a job, they get a job. This is about Daniel Jones next year and making sure he doesn't regress. I think Jason Garrett's a safe pick for offensive coordinator. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.